Elon Musk's success story from struggles to SpaceX and Tesla. The boy sat alone in his small room, the bright African sun beating down outside. Johannesburg in the late 1970s was noisy, rough, and full of contradictions. But inside this boy's mind was an entire universe that no one else could see. His name was Elon Musk, and even as a child, he felt like he didn't quite belong in the world around him. Elon wasn't like the other kids. While they were running outside, playing sports, or laughing in the schoolyard, he was often hidden away with a book in his hand. He read everything he could find: science fiction novels, encyclopedias, even his father's engineering books. When most kids were dreaming about toys, Elon was dreaming about planets, rockets, and the mysteries of the universe. But his childhood wasn't easy. His parents' marriage fell apart, and he grew up mostly with his father, a strict and complicated man. Elon often felt isolated, trapped between a turbulent home and a school life where he was bullied constantly. The other boys saw him as strange, a nerd who preferred books over games. Many times he was beaten up so badly that he came home with bruises and swollen eyes. Yet, deep inside, Elon carried something no one else could beat out of him: curiosity. At the age of 9, he discovered computers. Back then, they were still rare and expensive, but when he finally got his hands on one, he was mesmerized. It wasn't just a machine, it was a gateway to creation. Elon taught himself how to program, staying up late at night, typing line after line of code with relentless focus. At only 12 years old, he designed his first video game called Blastar, a simple space shooter. He sold it for about $500. For many people, $500 might not sound like much, but for a lonely boy in South Africa, it was proof that his mind could create value. That moment planted a seed. If imagination could be turned into reality, then no dream was too big. Still, life didn't suddenly become easy. Elon's school years remained brutal. Once he was pushed down a staircase and beaten until he was unconscious. He spent a week in the hospital recovering. Many kids would have been crushed by that kind of pain, but Elon refused to let it define him. Instead, he went back to his books, his computer, and his dreams. He read endlessly about space exploration, captivated by authors like Isaac Asimov. Asimov wrote about the responsibility of advanced civilizations to expand beyond their planet and ensure survival. Those words struck deep in Elon's young heart. Even as a teenager, he began to believe humanity had no future if it stayed confined to Earth. Most people laughed at such dreams. After all, what could a boy from Pretoria, South Africa, possibly do to change the destiny of humanity? But Elon didn't think the way most people did. He wasn't focused on what was realistic. He was focused on what was necessary. And in that quiet room, while the rest of the world ignored him, a lonely boy was already building the foundation for the impossible. Because sometimes greatness doesn't start with applause or recognition or even belief from others. Sometimes it starts with a dream that no one else understands except the one who dares to hold on to it. By the time Elon Musk turned 17, his dreams had outgrown South Africa. He had spent years imagining a future where humanity explored the stars, but deep down he knew staying in his home country would never give him the chance to make those dreams real. South Africa in the 1980s was a land divided, full of conflict and limitations. Elon felt trapped, not only by the political climate, but also by the sense that the opportunities he craved lay far beyond the borders of his homeland. He needed to escape. He needed to go where ideas, technology, and ambition collided to create the impossible. That place in his mind was America. But America wasn't easy to reach. Elon had no fortune, no connections, and no safety net waiting for him overseas. What he did have was a plan. Through his mother's Canadian heritage, he applied for a Canadian passport. If he could make it to Canada, he believed he could eventually make it to the United States. At 17, with little more than determination and a suitcase, Elon boarded a plane. He left behind family, familiarity, and the only life he had ever known. Most teenagers would have been terrified. But Elon wasn't thinking about fear. He was thinking about the future. Life in Canada was not glamorous. Elon arrived with almost no money. He stayed with relatives, worked low-paying jobs, and lived modestly. One summer, he even worked on a farm shoveling grain and cutting wood for $18 an hour, a job so tough that most workers quit within days. Elon endured. To him, every drop of sweat was an investment in the dream he refused to abandon. He enrolled at Queen's University in Ontario, eager to expand his knowledge and explore new possibilities. College life wasn't easy either. Elon was socially awkward, often lost in his thoughts, and lived frugally. But he absorbed knowledge like a sponge, reading textbooks for fun and constantly thinking about the future of technology and humanity. Yet even Canada wasn't the final destination. 2 years later, Elon made another bold move, this time to the United States. He transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, where he pursued degrees in both economics and physics. While most students focused on passing exams, Elon spent his free time discussing grand ideas with friends: space travel, clean energy, the future of the internet. One of his college friends later said, "You could see that Elon was going to do something big." He talked about changing the world like other people talked about weekend plans. But Elon wasn't just a dreamer. He was a doer. During his time at Penn, he rented a large house with his roommate and turned it into a weekend nightclub, charging entry fees to cover their rent. It was messy, chaotic, and far outside his comfort zone, but it showed something important. Elon understood the power of risk and action. He wasn't afraid to try, to fail, and to learn. Still, money was tight. There were nights he slept in his office or skipped meals, yet he never complained. Struggle for Elon was simply part of the journey. As graduation approached, he faced a choice: follow the safe path with a stable job, or take the risky path toward the future he envisioned. Elon chose the risk. He believed the biggest problems facing humanity were energy, the internet, and space exploration. He decided he would dedicate his life to solving them. And so, with barely a few $1,000s, no wealthy family to support him, and no guarantee of success, Elon Musk stood at the edge of adulthood, ready to take his first real steps into the unknown. Because sometimes the first step toward success isn't about having everything figured out. It's about daring to move forward, even when the road is uncertain. Silicon Valley in the mid-1990s was buzzing with a new energy. The internet was young, wild, and untamed. Most people didn't even understand what it was, but those who did believed it could reshape the future. Elon Musk was one of them. Fresh out of college, Elon decided to take his first leap into entrepreneurship. Along with his brother, Kimball Musk, he founded a company called Zip2. Their idea was simple but ahead of its time: an online city guide that combined maps, business directories, and advertisements. In today's world of Google Maps and Yelp, this seems obvious. But in 1995, it was revolutionary. There was just one problem: they had no money. The brothers rented a small office, so small and bare that it doubled as their home. They couldn't afford an apartment, so Elon slept on the office couch, showering at the local YMCA. They lived on cheap fast food, working late into the night on their clunky computers. Every dollar went into keeping the business alive. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what most people imagine when they hear the word startup. It was survival. And worse, almost nobody believed in them. Investors laughed at their idea. Businesses didn't understand why they should be online. Elon and Kimball knocked on countless doors, only to be rejected again and again. But rejection never stopped Elon. If the front door slammed shut, he'd climb through the window. When businesses refused to listen, he coded new features into the software himself. When investors doubted him, he worked harder to prove them wrong. He lived with a relentless intensity. Days blurred into nights, and nights blurred into mornings. Elon would often code until 3 or 4 a.m., crash for a few hours on the office floor, and wake up to keep going. Yet, for all his brilliance, Elon wasn't a smooth talker or a charming salesman. He was awkward, direct, and sometimes too honest. This often made investors skeptical of him. More than once, potential backers walked away, shaking their heads, saying, "This guy is too unrealistic." Still, Elon pressed on. After months of grinding, Zip2 slowly began to gain traction. A few businesses signed on, then a few more. Eventually, they landed contracts with bigger companies like the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune. The little startup that nobody believed in started to look like it might actually work. But success didn't come without pain. Elon clashed with investors who wanted to push him aside, doubting his ability to run the company. They tried to limit his role, arguing he was too inexperienced to lead. Elon felt betrayed. After all, this was his vision, his blood, his sweat, his sleepless nights. It was his first real taste of the harsh truth of business. Dreamers are often doubted the most. In 1999, after years of struggle, Compaq bought Zip2 for over $300 million. Elon walked away with $22 million from the sale. For a boy who once slept on couches and worked out of a tiny office, it was life-changing. But here's the thing about Elon Musk. Money was never the goal. While most people would have retired or lived comfortably, Elon felt like he had just begun. To him, Zip2 wasn't the end. It was only the first wall he had broken through, and many bigger walls still stood in his path. Because success, as Elon was learning, isn't a straight line. It's a constant cycle of dreams, walls, failures, and breakthroughs. And if you don't keep climbing, you stop growing, and Elon Musk had no intention of stopping. When Elon Musk sold Zip2 in 1999, he walked away with $22 million at just 28 years old. For most people, that would have been enough to retire, buy a mansion, and live a life of luxury. But Elon wasn't most people. For him, money was never about comfort. It was about building the future. Almost immediately, Elon began thinking about his next step. The internet was exploding with new opportunities, and Elon saw a gap in one of the most important areas of all: money. At the time, banking was painfully slow, outdated, and controlled by giant institutions. Elon believed money should move online as easily as emails did. With that vision, he launched X.com, an online financial services company that aimed to revolutionize how people transferred money. Once again, Elon went all in. He invested the bulk of his fortune into the company, putting everything at risk. Friends told him he was crazy. Investors were skeptical, but Elon pressed forward, convinced that online payments were the future. At first, X.com gained attention. People were fascinated by the idea of sending money instantly over the internet. But competition was fierce. A small rival company called Confinity, led by Peter Thiel and Max Levchin, was building a similar service called PayPal. Eventually, the two companies merged, combining resources under one name, PayPal. This was both a blessing and a curse for Elon. On one hand, PayPal quickly became popular, growing faster than anyone expected. On the other hand, Elon's leadership style clashed with the other executives. He was relentless, demanding, and often uncompromising. He pushed his team to work at the same extreme pace he did, expecting nothing less than total dedication. Many admired his brilliance but struggled with his intensity. Some resented him. Tensions rose. In 2000, while Elon was away on his honeymoon, the PayPal board staged a coup. They voted to remove him as CEO, replacing him with Peter Thiel. Elon returned to find himself sidelined in his own company. It was a brutal blow. Imagine pouring your heart, soul, and millions of dollars into a dream, only to be pushed aside. For many, that would have been the end. The humiliation alone would have been enough to walk away forever. But Elon didn't quit. He stayed on as a major shareholder, continuing to support the company even if he wasn't leading it. In 2002, when eBay acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion, Elon's share was worth around $180 million. The money was life-changing. But more importantly, the experience had given him something far greater than wealth: wisdom. Elon learned that having the best idea wasn't enough. To build something lasting, you needed leadership, teamwork, and sometimes compromise. He also learned the brutal reality of business politics, the fact that people could admire your vision but still push you out. Instead of growing bitter, Elon grew sharper. He realized that setbacks weren't failures, they were lessons. Every betrayal, every rejection, every humiliation was fuel. And with $180 million now in his hands, he was ready to bet it all again. Because while others saw money as the destination, Elon saw it as a vehicle to the stars. The dream he had carried since childhood, the dream of rockets, space, and humanity's future, was now within reach. He had the wisdom, the resources, and the scars that made him stronger. And so Elon Musk turned his eyes to the sky. By 2002, Elon Musk had something he'd never had before: resources. With the sale of PayPal, he now held nearly $180 million. Most people in his position would have taken the safe road: invest wisely, live luxuriously, and protect their wealth. But Elon was different. He asked himself a simple question: what are the problems that will most affect the future of humanity? The answer, in his mind, was clear. 1, we must transition to sustainable energy. 2, we must expand beyond Earth, becoming a spacefaring civilization. The second dream, the one he had carried since he was a boy in South Africa, burned brightest. Humanity, he believed, needed to colonize Mars. Not just for adventure, but for survival. If Earth faced disaster, humanity needed a backup plan. So in 2002, Elon founded SpaceX, Space Exploration Technologies. At the time, it seemed insane. Starting a rocket company was something only governments could do. The costs were astronomical, the risks overwhelming. Industry veterans openly mocked him. One NASA official famously said, "If anyone thinks they can start a rocket company and compete with NASA, they're crazy." But Elon wasn't aiming to compete. He was aiming to transform. He poured nearly $100 million of his own money into SpaceX, hiring a small team of brilliant but unproven engineers. Together, they worked out of a modest warehouse in El Segundo, California. There were no lavish offices, no big budgets, just raw determination and long nights. Elon's leadership was relentless. He demanded excellence and pushed his team to limits they didn't think possible. He slept at the factory, often working 100-hour weeks, and expected his engineers to do the same. To outsiders, it looked obsessive. To Elon, it was necessary. In 2006, after years of design and testing, SpaceX launched its first rocket, the Falcon 1. It failed. The rocket lifted off, only to crash into the ocean seconds later. Millions of dollars gone in smoke. Critics laughed. Amateurs, they sneered. But Elon didn't stop. He pushed harder. In 2007, they tried again. Another Falcon 1 launch, another failure, more money burned, more critics circling. Still, Elon refused to quit. By 2008, the stakes were terrifying. SpaceX prepared its third launch. This time, the pressure was unbearable. The company was bleeding money. Elon had invested almost everything. If this launch failed, SpaceX would die. The rocket launched. It soared. For a few minutes, hope returned. But then disaster. The Falcon 1 failed again. 3 launches, 3 failures. The world mocked him louder than ever. Headlines ridiculed the dot-com millionaire who thought he could build rockets. Investors walked away. Even friends advised him to quit, to cut his losses, to move on. Behind the scenes, Elon was crumbling. SpaceX wasn't his only burden. Tesla, his electric car company, was also struggling. He had poured so much money into both companies that by late 2008, he was almost broke. He had gone from millionaire to nearly bankrupt in just a few years. Yet, even in those darkest nights, Elon refused to surrender. He told his team, "We will make this work. Even if I have to spend my last dollar, we are not giving up." And in silence, while the world mocked and doubted, Elon Musk kept grinding. Because sometimes success isn't about talent or luck or even timing. Sometimes it's about standing tall when every voice around you screams that you should sit down. 2008, the year Elon Musk came closest to losing it all. SpaceX had burned through nearly all his fortune. 3 rockets had exploded, each one costing millions of dollars and years of work. Tesla was in chaos, production delays, mounting debts, and a financial crisis that shook the entire world. Elon wasn't just struggling in business. His personal life was unraveling too. His marriage was falling apart. He was exhausted, emotionally drained, and nearly bankrupt. Reporters wrote him off as a reckless dreamer who had flown too close to the sun. Friends whispered that he was finished. Even his harshest critics weren't cruel enough to predict what he already feared in the quiet of night, that both SpaceX and Tesla might die, taking his dream of the future with them. But Elon Musk is built differently. Instead of giving up, he went all in, one last time. With just enough resources left for one final launch, Elon told his SpaceX team, "We have no choice. This has to work." On September 28th, 2008, the 4th Falcon 1 stood on the launch pad. The tension was unbearable. Every engineer, every scientist, every dreamer at SpaceX knew this was do or die. If the rocket failed, it wasn't just the company that would collapse. It was Elon's dream of making humanity a spacefaring civilization. The countdown began. The engines ignited. The rocket soared into the sky. Seconds passed, then minutes. No explosion, no failure. For the first time, the Falcon 1 flew all the way into orbit. SpaceX had done it. It was a small rocket, carrying only a modest payload. But to Elon Musk and his team, it was a giant leap forward. It proved they weren't crazy. It proved private spaceflight could work. Still, success didn't come with instant relief. SpaceX was alive, but barely. Tesla was still teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Elon had poured every last dollar into keeping both companies afloat. At one point, he had to borrow money from friends just to pay rent. At the same time, Tesla secured last-minute funding to keep its doors open. The electric car company, once mocked as impossible, was given one more chance to prove itself. For Elon, these were not final victories. They were fragile, temporary lifelines. But they were enough. Enough to keep the dream alive, enough to silence the critics for a moment, and enough to show the world that sometimes, when you refuse to quit, the universe throws you a rope. Elon once said, when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. The odds had been stacked against him from the start. He had faced rejection, humiliation, and near total financial ruin. But with one rocket reaching orbit, one contract signed, and one company barely surviving, Elon had something he hadn't had in years: momentum. And momentum, no matter how small, is often the difference between collapse and greatness. The NASA contract had saved SpaceX from collapse, but Elon Musk's battles were far from over. If rockets were his dream of the future, cars were his war with the present. Tesla was still bleeding money. The first car, the Tesla Roadster, had shown that electric cars could be exciting, but it was expensive, unreliable, and produced in tiny numbers. To survive, Tesla needed something bigger, something that could prove electric cars weren't just toys for the rich, but a real alternative to gasoline. That car would be the Model S. Designing it was ambitious. Producing it was nearly impossible. Tesla was a small company going up against automotive giants like Ford, Toyota, and General Motors, companies with billions of dollars, massive factories, and decades of experience. Critics mocked Tesla as a startup car company destined to fail. Elon ignored them. He poured his energy, money, and soul into the Model S. He demanded perfection, sleek design, long battery life, powerful acceleration. It couldn't just be an electric car, it had to be the best car in the world. But perfection came at a cost. Tesla faced endless delays. The technology was unproven, suppliers were unreliable, and the money was running out again. Elon called it production hell. Workers labored day and night. Elon himself slept on the factory floor, refusing to leave until the problems were solved. Investors panicked. The media attacked. Articles declared Tesla a fraud, a fantasy, a bubble waiting to burst. Short sellers bet billions against the company, hoping it would collapse so they could profit from its failure. The pressure was crushing. Elon admitted later that those years were some of the darkest of his life. At one point, he said, "Tesla was bleeding money like you wouldn't believe. I was sleeping on the floor in the factory because I didn't think it was right to sleep in a comfortable office while my workers were on the line." But the harder the world pushed against him, the harder Elon pushed back. In 2012, after years of struggle, the Tesla Model S finally launched. It wasn't just good, it was extraordinary. Motor Trend named it the Car of the Year, calling it a historic achievement. Reviewers were stunned. Here was a car that was faster, safer, and more exciting than most gasoline cars, and it was fully electric. The victory was sweet, but it wasn't the end. The automotive industry was ruthless, and Tesla's survival was still fragile. Every quarter brought new challenges, new doubts, new enemies rooting for failure. Yet the Model S had proven one thing: Tesla wasn't a joke anymore. It was real. And for Elon, that was the essence of the big test. Not proving his critics wrong, but proving to the world that humanity could choose a different path. A path away from fossil fuels towards sustainability. Still, the fight was far from over. Bigger tests awaited. Mass production of affordable cars, scaling SpaceX to Mars missions, and daring projects in energy and transportation. But for the first time in years, Elon Musk stood on solid ground. The dream had survived another storm. Because the big tests in life aren't meant to stop us, they're meant to shape us. And Elon Musk being shaped into something even stronger than before. A man who had stared down the impossible and refused to look away. For years, Elon Musk had lived in survival mode, balancing Tesla on the edge of bankruptcy, begging suppliers for parts, fighting lawsuits, and pouring every dollar he had into SpaceX and Tesla. But now, in the early 2010s, the tide was turning. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably, the breakthroughs were arriving. SpaceX. A dream becomes real in 2010. SpaceX achieved what many thought impossible. The Falcon 9 rocket launched successfully into orbit and returned safely. For the first time, a private company, not a government agency, had built a rocket capable of carrying cargo to space. Then came another leap. In 2012, SpaceX's Dragon capsule became the first commercial spacecraft to deliver supplies to the International Space Station. NASA had taken a gamble on SpaceX, and it paid off. Elon's vision was no longer a crazy billionaire's hobby. It was shaping the future of space travel. Still, Elon wasn't satisfied. Rockets had always been disposable. Once they launched, they fell into the ocean and were destroyed. Elon saw that as madness. Imagine if airplanes were thrown away after one flight, he said. No one could afford to fly. So, SpaceX began working on the boldest idea yet, reusable rockets. The first tests were disasters. Rockets exploded on landing, fireballs lit the sky, and critics laughed. Headlines called SpaceX a spectacular failure. Elon lost millions with every crash, but he refused to quit. Finally, in 2015, after countless failures, the impossible happened. A Falcon 9 rocket launched into orbit, returned to Earth, and landed upright on a drone ship in the ocean. History was made. For the first time, humanity had a reusable orbital rocket. SpaceX had changed space travel forever. Meanwhile, Tesla was turning skeptics into believers. After the success of the Model S, the company doubled down with the Model X SUV and the Model 3, a car designed to be affordable for the mass market. The Model 3 in particular became a phenomenon. Hundreds of thousands of people placed deposits before the car was even built. Factories were overwhelmed with demand. Tesla's mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy was no longer just a slogan. It was happening. But the road wasn't smooth. Tesla faced production hell once again with the Model 3. Machines broke down, parts ran late, and Elon worked himself to exhaustion, often sleeping in the factory. At one point, Tesla was just weeks away from collapse. Yet, through sheer grit, the company survived. Slowly, Model 3s began rolling off the assembly lines in huge numbers. Customers loved them, reviewers praised them. Tesla's cars became symbols of the future, clean, powerful, and fast. For the first time, the world began to see Elon Musk not as a reckless gambler, but as a visionary who was delivering on his promises. By the late 2010s, Elon Musk had become a global icon. Tesla's value soared, SpaceX was rewriting history, and Elon's other ventures, Solar City, Starlink, Neuralink, and the Boring Company, were gaining attention. He wasn't just building companies, he was building an empire of ideas. Electric cars, space travel, brain-computer interfaces, underground transport tunnels, global internet satellites. Elon was working on problems that touched every corner of human life. The world began to take notice. Time magazine named him one of the most influential people. Young entrepreneurs worshipped him as the modern-day Thomas Edison. Fans camped outside Tesla stores. Kids wrote essays about him as their hero. But perhaps the greatest recognition came from within. Elon's vision of a sustainable interplanetary future was no longer science fiction. It was now a serious, achievable goal. Elon Musk's breakthroughs weren't born from luck. They were forged in the fire of failure, doubt, and relentless perseverance. For every rocket that exploded, for every car that stalled on the production line, for every article predicting his downfall, Elon answered with action. He taught the world a vital truth. Success doesn't come when you avoid failure. Success comes when you refuse to stop after failing. And now, standing at the peak of his hardest battles, Elon Musk wasn't just successful, he was unstoppable. But Elon's story wasn't about enjoying success, it was about pushing the limits of what was possible. And he was only getting started. By the late 2010s and early 2020s, Elon Musk had gone beyond being an entrepreneur. He had become a force of global change. His companies weren't just successful businesses, they were shaking entire industries, rewriting the rules, and forcing governments, competitors, and ordinary people to rethink the future. When Tesla started, the big car companies laughed. General Motors, Toyota, Ford, BMW, none of them believed electric cars could ever compete. They thought batteries were too weak, too expensive, and that people would never abandon gasoline. But by 2020, Tesla had proven them wrong. The Model 3 became the world's best-selling electric car. Countries like Norway, the Netherlands, and even China saw Tesla vehicles dominating the roads. Suddenly, every car company rushed to catch up. Volkswagen announced massive investments in EVs, Ford launched the Mustang Mach-E, Porsche built the Taycan, and even luxury brands like Mercedes and Audi joined the electric race. Tesla had forced an industry revolution. Elon didn't just want electric cars. He wanted a sustainable energy ecosystem. Through Solar City and later Tesla Energy, he began installing solar panels on homes and businesses. Then came the Powerwall and Power Pack, massive batteries capable of storing solar energy and powering entire buildings or even cities. In 2017, when South Australia suffered a huge power crisis, Elon tweeted that he could fix it with the world's largest battery and promised to do it in 100 days or it would be free. Critics scoffed, but in just 63 days, Tesla delivered. The massive battery farm stabilized the region's electricity grid, saving millions of dollars and proving renewable energy could work at scale. Once again, Elon turned critics into believers. SpaceX's success wasn't just about rockets. It was about changing humanity's relationship with space. Governments that once relied solely on NASA or the Russian Soyuz program now turned to SpaceX for affordable, reliable launches. The Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets became the workhorses of the space industry. Then came Starlink, a constellation of thousands of satellites designed to deliver high-speed internet anywhere on Earth. Remote villages, ships in the ocean, even war zones. Suddenly, internet access was possible. For the first time, the dream of global internet coverage was becoming real. In places where governments had failed to connect people, SpaceX was stepping in. Starlink wasn't just about convenience, it was about freedom, opportunity, and connection for millions who had been left behind. Beyond cars, rockets, and energy, Elon launched companies that sounded like pure science fiction. Neuralink aimed to connect the human brain with computers, opening possibilities for curing paralysis, blindness, and neurological diseases. It also raised questions about the future of human intelligence. The Boring Company started digging underground tunnels to solve traffic jams. Many laughed at the flamethrower promotions and quirky marketing, but the vision of high-speed underground transport sparked serious conversations about the future of urban mobility. Elon was no longer just an innovator. He was a provocateur of human imagination. He pushed people to think bigger, to dream wilder, to question the limits of what was possible. Elon's work began influencing governments around the world. Countries introduced new laws supporting electric vehicles. Space agencies partnered with SpaceX instead of building their own rockets. Nations invested in renewable energy, inspired by Tesla's projects. Even world leaders took notice. President, prime ministers, and royalty invited Elon for talks. Some praised him as a genius, while others worried about his power, but no one could ignore him. Global inspiration beyond business and politics, Elon Musk became a symbol of possibility. Students studied him like they once studied Einstein or Edison. Young entrepreneurs quoted him as motivation for their startups. Dreamers around the world felt less crazy when chasing their own wild ideas because Elon had shown that even the wildest dreams could come true. Of course, Elon was far from perfect. His tweets sparked controversy, his management style was brutal, and his personality often divided people. Some called him a visionary, others called him reckless. But whether people loved him or hated him, no one could deny his impact. He had already changed the course of multiple industries, and he wasn't stopping. Elon Musk's journey proved that one person's vision can reshape the world. Not because he was born with superpowers, but because he dared to push forward when others quit. He saw problems not as obstacles, but as challenges to be solved. And in doing so, he left an indelible mark, not just on business, not just on technology, but on the very direction of human civilization. Elon Musk's story is not finished. In fact, it is still unfolding, with new ventures, new challenges, and new controversies appearing every year. But even now, his legacy is undeniable. He has already become one of the most influential figures of the 21st century, not just in business, but in shaping humanity's future. His life offers powerful lessons for anyone daring to dream big. When history looks back at Elon Musk, it won't just list his companies. It will recognize the movements he started. Electric revolution. Before Musk, electric cars were a joke. After Musk, they became the future of transportation. Space revival. Before Musk, space exploration had slowed, becoming the playground of governments. After Musk, private companies and ordinary people could dream of the stars again. Energy shift. Before Musk, renewable energy was seen as unrealistic. After Musk, batteries, solar panels, and sustainable power became mainstream. Global connectivity. Before Musk, billions were left offline. After Musk's Starlink, the possibility of worldwide internet became real. Each industry he touched was disrupted, redefined, and reborn. That is his legacy. Transformation on a global scale. But Elon's legacy is not only about success, it's also about struggle. He faced failures that would have destroyed most entrepreneurs. He risked everything, often putting his last dollars into his vision. He endured ridicule, doubt, and public criticism. And yet, he pressed forward. His story teaches us that greatness does not come from comfort, but from relentless persistence in the face of chaos. Elon Musk is not perfect. He makes mistakes. His words sometimes ignite storms. His management style is intense, even brutal, but perhaps that is part of what makes him human and makes his achievements even more remarkable. So, what can we learn from Elon Musk's journey? 1. Dream bigger than logic. Allows. Most people thought rockets, electric cars, and brain-computer links were impossible. Elon showed that impossible often just means not yet attempted. 2. Take risks others won't. He invested his own fortune when no one else believed. Without risk, there is no reward. 3. Failure is the price of progress. Rockets exploded, cars failed, businesses nearly collapsed, but each failure was a lesson, not an ending. 4. Work ethic builds dreams. Musk is known for 80 to 100-hour work weeks. While not everyone needs that intensity, his dedication reminds us that ambition without hard work is only a fantasy. 5. Impact matters more than money. Though he became one of the richest men alive, Musk always insisted his true wealth was the ability to shape the future. Money was only fuel for his mission. Musk's journey is not just about the past, it's about the future still to come. Will humans colonize Mars? Will renewable energy replace fossil fuels? Will self-driving cars and AI redefine daily life? Will the brain-machine interface cure diseases or unlock new levels of human potential? The answers are still being written, but thanks to Elon Musk, these questions are no longer science fiction. They are active possibilities. Elon Musk's legacy is not about being the richest man in the world, nor about owning flashy companies. His legacy is about showing humanity that one person's vision, matched with courage and relentless effort, can shift the course of history. He reminds us that greatness does not come from following the crowd, but from daring to walk into the unknown when everyone else turns away. And maybe the most important lesson of all, the future belongs to the dreamers who refuse to give up. In this video, we explore Elon Musk's inspiring journey, the failures, the breakthroughs, and the lessons we can all learn to achieve success in our own lives. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more motivational stories of world changing people.